Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It is I, Emily Sophia, aka Mighty Sophia, here to break down for you guys the latest episode of Better Call Saul. We are on Season 3, Episode 4, Sabrosito. So, spoiler alert before I dive into the mad thick of things, as I shall be endeavoring to bear all in this review. We have a lot of ground to cover, so I am gonna hit that ground running as best I can. Pardon my super low alto-y voice. This morning I woke up like 20 minutes ago to do this video, but here we go. So this in my opinion is the first episode that registers as a genuine extension of Breaking Bad. I was so friggin' tickled as I watched this episode. I was smiling the entire time. Just goosebumpy butterfly goodness. And perhaps it's the fact that we spent so much time with the cartel and Gus and Mike at the top of the hour and then returned to another unforgettable location from the Mother Show in a cold open flashback. The balance of concurrent plots, with Mike being one of the main connective tissues because he's clinching the gap between Albuquerque's legal landscape and the drug trade, it makes this episode stand out from the others in terms of its immediate nostalgic appeal. So we begin and the camera lingers beneath the surface of a pool that Breaking Bad veterans should recognize pretty quickly. Hector Salamanca meets up with the animated Don Eladio at a very familiar location south of the border. So a quick minute of Breaking Bad history for those of you whose noggins are as foggy as mine. Don Eladio Fuente is the head of the Ciudad Juarez cartel, which has Juan Bolsa and the Salamanca clan in its employ, as well as Gus, whose partner Max was murdered as punishment for an entrepreneurial meth sales pitch gone awry 20 years prior to the events of Breaking Bad. Don Eladio actually ordered Hector to kill Max, while Juan Bolsa and Hector held Gus down and forced him to watch Max bleed out. Although Gus, with his mystery-enshrouded history in Chile, was spared. If you'll recall, Gus does enact his stunning, calculated pool party revenge in Season 4, Episode 10 of Breaking Bad, with Mike and Jesse on the scene as well. I rewatched the scene shortly before I did this review, actually, and let me tell you, it is so glorious to watch the bodies drop as Gus respectfully excuses himself from the festivities after getting lectured in keeping emotion out of business, and then literally washes his hands of the cartel's slaughter. It's pretty marvelous. And we mustn't forget that he also gets revenge on Bolsa in Season 4, Episode 8. Remember the Sangre por Sangre? Blood for blood? Yeah. So anyways, my assumption is that this meeting in Better Call Saul takes place in the years following Max's murder, further down the line after Gus paved the way for the Juarez cartel into the American Southwest market. But at any rate, Hector comes with Jimenez, who gets a stern but playful warning from the spirited cartel boss, and he receives a gift, a little trinket from Hector's business front. That's the little Sabrosito guy, which he uses to tease an apprehensive Jimenez and later emasculate Hector, who, as it turns out, is his inferior earner for the time being. Bolsa then joins the party, which is livelier now that rolls of cash are in the picture, and he also brings a Los Pollos Hermanos t-shirt. More like Butt Brothers, as Hector says. To which I say, good one, buddy. A few more duffels arrive on the scene, even more cash from the quote-unquote distribution genius, shrink-wrapped and packaged as neat and proper as the sender himself. Gustavo sends his regards. Shame he can't join. So after this attractive display, the rubber-banded business simply will not do for Eladio anymore. This is how he wants his legal tender, not to mention in this quantity, too. So after that, Eladio starts speaking through Sabrosito, which thinks that apparently Hector has a cute schlong. He just isn't raking in the bacon like Gus, I'm afraid to say. Hector's now on the receiving end of Eladio's scorn, and Hector later trades the disgruntlement of getting spectacularly shown up by his fellow cartel member for aggression and goes alpha male on Gus once he's back stateside. So amid the fallout of the ice cream business drug bust, Mike calls up his daughter-in-law, playing the part of the doting but hard-to-reach grandpa. So he pays Stacy and Kaylee a long overdue visit, and Stacy serves up some ice cream, hopefully not of the drug-laced variety, and the Ermintrouts nestle in and veg out together. It's an intimate little stopover, you know, but just beneath the surface of this peaceful familial bonding session, just a ripple of tension, you know, knowing what Mike left in order to be there. So the next day, Hector sets foot in Los Pollos Hermanos with Nacho in his wake, and it's very good to see him again. It's been a while. So assistant manager Lyle attempts to deal with Hurricane Hector, who lights up a cigar and invites himself behind the till, strolling around like he owns the place. It's a move that's at once bold and kind of childish from my perspective, as it could easily blow the cartel's cover and expose the illicit operation, but guess he doesn't take a dick joke lightly. So the kids working behind the counter are scared stiff, and the customers begin making a quiet little exodus and trickling out as the atmosphere shifts in a very hostile direction. So meanwhile, Gus is busy being a pillar of the community at the local fire department. And when he returns to the restaurant, he finds his yellow-clad staff rounded up as hostages, and he calmly dismisses the crew, and Lyle is honorably hesitant to leave the head honcho to the wolves, but Fring excuses him nevertheless with a sort of fatherly firmness and tenderness, you know? Get you a cartel distributor who can do it all. And he's just very nurturing that way. And his multi-layered charade is perfect. He has to feign pretending that he isn't afraid, which is a delicate balancing act. He can't look like he saw this coming, nor can he appear too afraid to handle things on his own. So we see that Hector's made himself at home in Gus's office, where he's scraping what's either dirt or shit from his boots onto Gus's no doubt immaculate desk. No crime goes unpunished, let me tell you. Gus rightly accuses Hector of endangering civilians and sticking it to the cartel in a very risky way. But Hector responds by declaring that he is the cartel. He is the Senate, and Gus is now his mule. Burdening the operation with more product doesn't seem like a sound approach from Gus's perspective, aside from, you know, the fact that he's getting totally disrespected, but Hector doesn't give a rat's ass. He's got it in his mind that he is the one who knocks. He is the law in this lawless land, and it's time to rein in the cutthroat competition. Gus takes the whole thing in stride as he privately tidies up the restaurant, smiling as if he knows that Salamanca will eventually get his comeuppance. I mean, he does, but so does Gus, you know? So Mike ends up ditching the paper-bagged payoff from the Eladio bust as soon as Gus's associate makes the drop-off. This action ultimately intrigues Gus, who hopes to carve out a permanent position on his payroll for such a capable jack-of-all-trades. No half measures from Mike. Wink, wink. So back at Los Pollos Hermanos, Gus rounds up the crew with the gentleness of a mother bird gathering its chicks under its wings, or like the world's best kindergarten teacher who's calling the children together for story time. In this case, it's a sensitive debriefing on the intimidating restaurant takeover. He's deeply sorry for the intruders, but applauds the team for, quote, acquitting themselves impeccably. He hopes that the offer of counsel for their trauma and 24 hours worth of overtime pay will abate their curiosity about the affair, but star pupil Lyle presses for more information. And, is it Giancarlo Esposito, the actor portraying Gustavo Fring, of course? He is brilliant in the scene that follows. Gus starts friggin' regaling the staff with the story of the thugs who demanded money at his first fledgling restaurant in Mexico. They rung him for cash, and what could he do to stay open but pay up? But as for what happened behind closed doors just hours before, well, Gus gets up on his invisible soapbox and delivers a stirring address to the doe-eyed workforce. And I've got to quote it for y'all because that that shit was inspiring. He's like, this is America. Here the righteous have no reason to fear. Here those men have no power. And when they saw that I had no fear of them, they ran like the cowards they are, back across the border. They will not return. We will move on from this. My friends, I promise you that together we will prosper. Can that just be his campaign slogan? Can we get him running for president here in the US of A? Make some "Together We Will Prosper" posters. I really hope I see that on my timeline at some point. But anyways, the staff breaks out in an uproar of applause as Gus, their fearless captain, loving patriarch, and knight in shining armor, lays on that patriotism thick. So elsewhere in Albuquerque, Kim successfully tracks down and secretly cancels Chuck's appointment with Martin's handyman and repair. Unbeknownst to Chuck, she and Jimmy send Mike in place of said repairman. And this gentleman comes bearing the Trojan horse of power tools. The forbidden fruit. And Chuck can barely suppress his panic, but he's helpless to send the electricity-wielding handyman away. So Mike successfully tortures Chuck with a drill, not in the way that you would expect someone to torture somebody with a drill, and sends him fleeing upstairs like his life depends on it, at which point he whips out an instant camera and gets some pictures. It's a repair job and a little recon, and Chuck, for once, is none the wiser. Chuck exploited his own psychosomatic illness to get at Jimmy, and now Jimmy is acting in kind with Mike as his patsy. So Jimmy admires Mike's, quote, museum quality prints at none other than Loyola's Diner, which is a setting made iconic by Breaking Bad and further endeared to us by Better Call Saul. Jimmy hopes that Mike can testify to Chuck's abiding douchebaggery, but Mike does not indulge him. He says it's nice to fix something for once, having successfully done what was asked of him by both McGill brothers, as it turns out. It's good to take pride in your work. And he's none too keen on playing plumber at Jimmy's office, though. And it turns out that Mike went above and beyond and found something of interest in Chuck's address book, arguably related to the original tape that we later discover Chuck has in his possession. It's in somebody's possession, anyway. It turns out that's what Kim's bingo is about after the initial summons with Miss Hayes. At least I'm pretty dang sure. I can't figure out what else it would be. Because I was trying to puzzle that out in the moment. I read a couple reviews and started piecing it together, and I was like, okay, I think I understand what's going down here. The subterfuge is afoot. So Gus later visits Mike at his toll booth, and when pressed about his refusal to accept payment from Gus, Mike responds, "What I didn't do for you." And Gus suggests that perhaps he's trying to fix something that cannot be, or correct something that cannot be corrected. And arguably that's what Gus is up to as well, you know, for speaking about the untimely death of his partner in years gone by. All Mike wanted to do was get Hector out of his head, but he may very well have earned himself a place in Gus's business instead. Before the two part ways, Gus even goes on to explain to Mike why he stopped him from killing Hector in the previous season. It's not just for continuity, because, you know, Tio Salamanca cannot go down yet. But, as Gus says, a bullet to the head would have been far too humane. But little does Gus know that their fates are inextricably linked thanks to a meth kingpin yet to come into the feud and shake things up. So that's some delicious knowledge to bear in mind. So finally, it is Howard and Chuck versus Kim and Jimmy. And the brothers are seated as far away from one another as possible when the pairs meet. And then they meet up with Miss Hay, the DDA and prosecutor, who's a bit too chummy with Chuck for Jimmy's liking, even chatting about his condition and offering an anecdote about her church choir phobic and may she rest in peace. But on with the show. After she lays out all the terms of the agreement, Chuck pokes at Jimmy's statement and takes issue with the exact line that he and Kim had doctored up back when they canceled his repairman, if you'll recall. And so he takes the bait because we know that this is just phase one of the trap. And there's a little quibble over the divide between, quote, damaged property and, quote, destroyed cassette tape. How about destroyed item of personal property? Guess that will suffice. This seems to be what Kim and Jimmy were hoping for anyway. As for the rest of Jimmy's statement, the confession is adequate as far as Miss Hay is concerned, but she can't sense any guilt on his part, which makes sense. So how about an apology? Let bygones be bygones. Hug it out. It's hard to tell where the showman ends and Jimmy begins sometimes, but he seems to honestly struggle when he addresses the cane to his Abel. And he says, "Chuck, I'm very sorry. I lost my temper and I did some things, so many things that I regret. I shouldn't have broken down your door. Doesn't matter how I was provoked. I shouldn't have done that. There's no excuse for that or for the things I said. I regret it all of it more than you can imagine, because you're my brother. And no one should treat his brother like that. Not ever, okay?" Drive it home, Jimmy as say, drive it home. And so after that little barb, he offers to pay the restitution of $321 right away, but in a flare-up of quintessential pettiness. Chuck insists that it's $323.98, accounting for the cassette tape that was destroyed. Very, very important. But anyways, once the meeting adjourns, Kim informs Chuck and Howard that she is going to be moving to suppress the tape right away. She knows that there has to be a duplicate. And this turns out to be the trap that we may have suspected, because Chuck, feeling overconfident, waves off Howard and tells her that, yeah, Jimmy destroyed the duplicate, actually, and the original is still under lock and key. Motions aside, the tape will be played, as Chuck threatens, but this is actually music to Kim's ears, in a sense, because it tells her that she and Jimmy were right on the money with their suspicions. So I cannot wait for the courtroom blitz next week at what's astonishingly enough the mid-season mark, because we're 10-episode seasons, right? Good God, this stuff is too good for it to move so quickly. But yeah, that is the episode. All of the major events, and of course anything I missed and that you want to address, please bring it up. There's so much to talk about in terms of just the cinematography and the staging and framing and writing. There are so many pieces of the show that are worthy of praise and accolades in abundance. So be overflowing with those things in the comments if in fact you enjoyed them. But once again, I just have to say this was so Breaking Bad-esque. It was uncanny. The sense of continuity between the series is truly incredible. Not that I've actually watched a ton of spin-off shows in my lifetime, so I can't really knowledgeably speak to how much better Better Call Saul is than, say, other spin-offs to other main series. But man, is this exciting. It's exhilarating to get to have Gus back in the picture, even to pay a visit to Don Eladio and to recall the events of days gone by, or at least days yet to come. I had to do a little bit of research before I could even do this breakdown, because I was like, okay, wait, I'm trying to remember what all happened, and as it all comes rushing back to me, I'm just like, man, what a gift it is to have this incredible universe deepened in such a rich way. And Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould's, their direction and the visual language and everything is just so... This series is easily keeping stride with its predecessor, and I hope that it continues to gain ground and continues to draw in a steady audience, because I know that it's kind of catered more to a niche market, I guess, but there's no freaking reason for that, because it is so delicious. Sabrosito. So that's about it from me. Keep the conversation going down in the comments below. This is just the beginning of the discussion, as I say in most of my videos. If you haven't yet, check out my American Gods review. Check out American Gods. Find somebody who can hook you up with that episode. If you don't have the service, find your way to it, because that's another incredible show that I'm going to be tracking for you guys. So, You guys take care, and as always, I will be back before you know it.